Good morning, everyone. We are waiting one more panelist, but it is time, so I think we can begin. And I was sitting in the previous panel and found out this is a very active audience, so I'm very glad with that. And so different from the previous panel, this panel should focus more on the seed stage, very early stage stuff. So we may have some overlap because all the colleagues here are from big pharma, and so we may give you the same advice, but we try to focus more on early stage stuff. And the big pharma is accessing more and more to the early stage asset, using different ways, and like building new team and building the new facility to help incubate the startups. So I will, for us, it is never such thing as too early. And so basically I will make a self-introduction. I will let our fellow panelists to introduce themselves. Then we can go to Q&A. And if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. And we would like to address your, questions first before I ask questions to my fellow panelists. So my name is Wei-Yong Song. I work for one of the largest pharmaceutical company in Japan, Daiichi Sankyo. And so my responsibility is to identify the very interesting and innovative technology in US, Canada, and Europe, and try to establish research collaboration in a relationship with biotech startups. And so for Daiichi Sankyo, we focus on oncology and cardiorenal, pain, and rare disease.
My name is Armin Rump. I'm in global business development for Otsuka Pharmaceutical, also a Japanese company. On a global scale, we are very active in CNS, psychiatry, as well as neurology, as well as renal disease, where we are excited to have the first product approved in polycystic kidney disease and trying to build a pipeline in renal franchise now. We're also active in oncology. And in terms of early stage, we're really trying, we established a scouting team, which I'm part of here in the US, just 2 years ago, in order to go early stage, not just the clinical, phase 2 proven assets, but really go early. And we go earlier to early steps in terms of, it's a process, ongoing process, but we can talk more about that later.
I am Kathy Thud. I am in the business development and licensing group for Novartis. I'm in the early stage, the research and early stage clinical development organizations in NIBR, Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research. And so our group does a lot of more traditional business development licensing, so licenses, acquisitions, etc. But we also have become more active in the early investment stages as well. So partnering with companies that have interesting technologies that we'd like to see progressed, and with the hope that they may turn into a bigger partnership in the future.
Hi, I'm Katie McCabe from Eli Lilly. I'm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Lilly is interested in neurodegeneration, pain, cardiovascular associated with diabetes, of course diabetes, immunology, and oncology. So my group, Emerging Technology and Innovation, is focused on preclinical assets or new modalities to Lilly. So things like cell therapy, gene therapy, RNA therapeutics. We're looking for things that are across all of our therapeutic areas, so something that would normally not be seen as pan-therapeutic, so that kind of platform. We get to work in a very interesting area because we have a search and evaluation part of our goals, and the other half is venture capital investing. So we have 6 venture capital funds that we're strategic limited partners in, and so that allows us to see the deal flow of these very early stage companies, as well as give them advice and then bring companies that we see at events like this to say, you guys really need to invest in these companies. So it's been a tremendous amount of fun doing everything from MTAs, pilot experiments, with new companies as well as in licensing deals. And I just love that we have so many different ways to say yes, and we try to be part of this ecosystem to really promote new companies with challenging jobs. So thank you.
So my first question is to both Katie and Kathy. Both the Eli Lilly and Novartis have the corporate venture capital. And how is your role, the role and the responsibility of your group different from the corporate venture capital, and how do you work with them?
You want to go first? Sure.
Yeah, so Novartis does have a traditional, the Novartis Venture Fund, a traditional VC group, which focuses on investments with an eye towards financial returns. And there's a couple of my colleagues here at the meeting today, and I'm happy to introduce you to them if people are interested to talk to them. The NIBR BD&L group, which I'm in, does investments mainly, as I mentioned earlier, to help push forward new technologies or new drugs that we're particularly interested in and see as a potential future larger partnership that we could use to augment the Novartis drug pipeline and not just financial returns.
So Lilly has two corporate venture arms, Lilly Asia Ventures and Lilly Ventures, that are separate legal entities, and their goal is primarily financial with some strategy. So our team is a little bit different, that we are directly part of Lilly. We interact with our search and evaluation teams as well as all of our therapeutic areas. So we have a goal by interacting with these VC funds. The first is to increase the knowledge of innovative technologies within Lilly. The second is to eventually improve our pipeline, because we'll be watching these technologies develop and help them develop. And then the third is we're trying to get a financial return, which has been really great. So Lilly loves our team because we get to do all this very innovative stuff for no cost to them, and sometimes we make money doing it as well. So it's just so much fun. So I guess that would be my summary.
I mean, the discovery unit of Oscar is in Japan, and please give the audience some guidance on how they can approach Oscar if they want to collaborate with the scientists in Japan.
Right, so as I mentioned, we established this scouting team here in the US 2 years ago. So the BD group really looks for things that are ready for the clinic, so late preclinical or in the clinic. We then have a scouting group in Japan called Scientific Partnering that looks for university collaborations. We are the interface to communicate with Japan. So you would approach me, I would send a slide deck to Japan. If they're interested, we would then probably sign an MTA to validate the data or the hypothesis and in our mouse models and so on. And then you would engage directly with the researchers in Japan. And they're very interested in good science, no matter how early or, those are hardcore scientists there that are get excited by the science.
Any question from the audience? Okay. My next question to the panel: how early can you go? And what is most important to you, the science, the management team, the IP, or something else?
I guess I'll go first. So I work with companies that don't have websites, they don't have their seed money. That's probably the earliest I've gone. Oh, I guess I do actually work in academia as well through Partners Innovation Fund. So I actually will work with people with the idea. Through one of our venture funds, we've actually helped form 2 companies from scratch. So that's pretty early. So they went from a concept to becoming extremely well funded. In terms of the science is always the driver, and the team is good, but I will say working with VC funds is that if they have a strong VC partner, they will help them get the right senior leadership and the right type of expertise on the board. But yeah, strong scientific founders, back to the science, really makes a difference. Absolutely. But at the same time, if you have something very innovative, it really doesn't matter where you are, but it certainly doesn't hurt if people within Lilly know you or within the field.
Okay, so I'm definitely happy to talk to anyone as early as yesterday, we're talking to a gene therapy company that's not incorporated yet. But it's not really actionable at that point for us. I think we need something, an antibody or compound or something where we can sign an MTA and validate some data, some kind of biological proof of concept maybe. In some cases, if we talk about fibrosis, we have lung data, we're interested in kidney, so we do the kidney mouse model in Japan. I think that's the point where you can take action. Before that, it's more relationship building.
So I think our sweet spot is in sort of the Series A type investments for the NIBR BDNL group. We tend not to be the initial investor in the company, but are happy to join a syndicate and happy to join a syndicate. We have done a handful of collaborations at the more seed stage where we are the only investor, or maybe providing a loan up front that can convert into equity once the company does raise a Series A. But yeah, so we can look at both stages. I'd say in the very early stages, probably technologies are more are easier to do for a very early stage company. For things that are products, for instance, I think we usually want to see a little bit more data.
Yeah, adding to that, Daiichi Sankyo is focusing on first-in-class, and therefore we really can go very early stage and even like to the target validation stage. And we also like technology platform. And last week there was a press release from a Bay Area-based technology company, Prolinx. We published a paper regarding our joint research collaboration using their technology to extend the small molecule half-life for the eye disease, because the frequency you inject into eye is critical for those kind of drugs. And so that is one example, like a technology platform. The other thing what we are doing is we have like a grant program, and that we call it TANEDS, TANEDS, and you can search that from the Daiichi Sankyo website. Tane in Japanese means seed. If you have an idea and if you have a new target, you can apply to that grant program. The grant itself is very small. It's matched to the SBRI phase 1 funding. Basically, it's $150,000 US per year for 2 years. But that's the start stage. Once you deliver the result during that 2-year period, we will move into like SBRI phase 2, which can be $1 million. Please.
You mentioned IP. Especially for spin-offs, early stage companies that are academic institution spin-offs, it's a challenge for us not to file IP. And when we reach out to companies, some of them, depends on the company, and I want to hear your strategies on what you consider filing in terms of early stage. When should we file and come to you? Because in one case, I'm giving just an example that the company said, if you file, that is not the right IP strategy for us. So it's a challenge for an academic institution. So what are your thoughts? When should we file, especially on composition of matter?
No, I don't.
Okay, I can first give you some advice there, and I let my fellow panelists comment later. I understand that the timing of filing the compositional matter patents matters, because if you filed earlier, then the protection period is short, right? And you want to also know whether this is really the final clinical candidate, right? So from our point of view, actually at that early stage, IP is not so important. Typically, especially from the academic research institute, when they call it a clinical candidate, from the big pharma's point of view, in general, it is just a tool compound. So we definitely want to work with you and using that compound as a lead to put more medicinal chemistry on it, and then we can file a joint IP together. So that is like the essential strategy.
So I would sort of, so I work a lot with MGH and Brigham and Women's, and so the professors need to publish, right? And so they file their patents based on what they need to do academically. That's understood. I think where there's the issue is when the IP is filed 10 years ago, and so I try to be patient and say, well, what is your strategy for developing new IP? And if it's repurposing something or it's been around for a long time, then I just can't move forward with it. But to say like that you filed last year or the year before and that was too late, that seems kind of ridiculous, but probably not a good partner for you then.
Yeah, and I would echo what Katie said. I think that we have to see that there's some kernel of IP that's there at the beginning, but we can also work with you as once we've made an investment to help you with the IP strategy.
And especially when working with academia, that you're going to you may be licensing that IP and then developing new on your own for the companies, and this is just, it's not a single patent that you're dealing with, it's a portfolio that you're developing over time. So we just need to know what the plan is, and if there is no IP, then there has to be something very clever that gives you an advantage, but most of the time there's IP.
Adding to that, if it is like a technology platform or a method of use IP can prevent others to pursue same indication, that's a different story. We want you to file the IP as early as possible.
From my perspective, I think whether the IP is 1 year long or short has an impact on the NPV calculation, which comes downstream. In the diligence, if you don't have an actual indication with data behind it, you can't have a sales forecast and NPV. There are more critical issues on the path, having done late stage deals where people say we have clinical proof of concept, but then you look at there's no compound and formulation. It's just, you can't start the phase 3 and you need another 2 years for the manufacturing part. That is a big problem, but whether the IP is a year longer or shorter at that stage, that comes in, but not really early stage.
Actually, your comments reminded me to ask another question. I understand, when you place a price tag on like a licensing opportunity, you always use the cash flow and calculate the risk-adjusted NPV. But for the early stage technology or like the seed stage level, you cannot do that, right? If you do that, it always turns into a negative NPV. So how do you evaluate the technology and place a price tag on it?
Yeah, I can just say that we do not do NPVs for things that have not yet entered the clinic, because it's just too difficult to know what the efficacy is going to be, what the safety is going to be, et cetera. We do more looking at comparable deals, but in the investing space, it's more about what does the company need, what cash does the company need to get to various inflection points, and that's how we sort of think about it, I think, from the investing point of view.
Yeah, I've worked at one of the companies. We tried to do NPVs, and we're like, can we just stop this already? It's ridiculous for the preclinical assets. So comparables are very important. And then, when it's in your therapeutic area of knowledge, then you have a pretty good idea about what the value of certain types of therapeutics could be. But it's all a guessing game because you were so far out. But if the science is great, then usually I'm okay. I don't worry about the money as much, and then my therapeutic leaders get excited about it as well. And so that's really what we're going for the early stage, is the first in class, something really novel, and these breakthroughs. So the money part sometimes gets to come somewhat second, but it's always in the package, right?
So
I think we would put a number. We would, in the early stage, there's so many variables, and you find some that make it positive somehow. Because we come from a later stage kind of culture, and the board wants to see a number. But I think that the real value estimation is, we have internal researchers in the therapeutic field that are interested and know what things are worth in terms of research projects.
So besides the numbers, what terms might your firm attach to a deal with a seed stage company? What kind of creative deal structure do you have? What is the different point that would appeal to a potential partner?
I can start. So we'll do MTAs with no money attached. That can be the easiest way for, so let's say you have a great compound and Lilly has a great animal model. We're probably sending it to a CRO anyway. We cover that cost. And then we share the data. Other things that we've done, we have, for a pilot project, we actually treated them as a vendor, so I could get through Lilly's process as quickly as possible because they needed the money right away, and we even paid them upfront, which is not normal for a vendor. So we've gotten kind of creative that way. Other things that we'll do is if we do in-kind services, like Kathy had mentioned, doing it in exchange for equity that converts later once they're past the seed stage, because otherwise you become a controlling interest. So all the companies that I work with that are in this BC area, we consider that we have to make sure that you are always fundable. So we're not in it to block you from making what your value. So that recently closed a deal where we had to do some very creative financing as well as what we're asking for in exchange, and Lilly is giving quite a bit for that in terms of what we're doing to match, to really help them with their IP. But it was really worth it for us to be able to see this, A, happen, and B, on the time scale before no one else. And so we'll make those flexible choices.
Adding to that, go ahead.
I'm sorry, before you make decision in investing, do you consider the size of potential market when you make a decision if you want to go in or not? And what would be that size of the potential market?
There needs to be a definite medical need that needs to be very clear, especially in the early stage. Who knows whether the compound ends up where you think it does, but we do need a very clear medical need to justify a large investment into the clinical studies. I do think our company has a scale that would not, if you have a orphan disease where you can save the life of 10 children worldwide, that might be more suitable for a smaller company. In a huge global company, it really has scale and things that the logistics probably won't work very well for such an ultra-orphan disease. I don't have cut-off numbers. I think we do definitely go quite far on the orphan side, but there's a limit to that.
Yeah, and I think for Novartis, it's not necessarily it's a combination of the number of patients that we could help and and how impactful that drug is going to be for those patients. So if it's truly life-changing or life-saving, I think then we are interested in working in indications that perhaps have fewer patients. Whereas if it's if it's something that's more additive or has less impact on the patient's lives, you want to see a larger indication.
So I'd say for Lilly in general, we do not work on rare diseases unless it has a clear path to much larger indications. In terms of the valuation of sort of separating out, I think a distinction would be what the market size is versus the number of patients, because those can be very distinct. But if you look at people's ability to guess what the market and how much money you're going to make, it's really random. So if we looked at what we thought a risk assessment, on average, we're perfect. But if you look at any one, we're usually off, either a lot in the positive or a lot in the negative. And so Lilly has been doing that. We still have to do it, but that value of how much the market sizes can be pretty difficult to do in the early stages. So there's just, the competition can change, and then obviously with all the payer complexities, I think it gets harder to do. So strategically, we just focus on larger diseases. So I think that's, that would be a mover for us rather than what the actual commercial value would be.
I'm interested in your ideas around software and data analytics investments and how you're seeing those these days.
So it's an area that Novartis has got really excited about recently, and it's definitely one of the pushes that we're making in the next couple of years to see how we can use the data that we generate ourselves and also the data that's just out in the rest of the scientific universe that we can use to make better decisions about trials, about targets, for instance. So.
And in your area, then, would it be something that you would collaborate early or invest in or want to license, sort of the different models?
I think it would depend on the opportunity. I think we'd be open to all of those. We do have somebody in our group who focuses especially in the digital space, who could answer your question better, and I'd be happy to introduce you.
Could you give us an idea of when you do make an investment of what your sweet spot would be for amount?
Okay, maybe from Daiichi's point of view, we typically do two kinds of deals. One is we focus on really early stage stuff, as I mentioned. And the reason for that, although Daiichi is a big company in Japan, we are not as big as Novartis or Eli Lilly in the States. So to compete with Novartis and Eli Lilly on late stage stuff is not our advantage, right? And so that is the reason that we want to go early. But on the other hand, in Japan, we have the #1 market share. And so even like Pfizer or Takeda, has less market share in Japan compared to Daiichi. So for the, opportunity already achieved the human POC, we want to get the Japanese right. So that is why like Amgen gave the denosumab to us for the Japanese right. And also like even the AZ gave the Nexium, to us. And like we also did like the deal with Kite on the CAR-T. Those are the like the opportunities already achieved human POC when we got the Japanese right.
And what type of investment are you making in the companies? What size?
That's a very good question. Typically, different from other major pharma, Daiichi do not have like corporate VC firm, and we try to get involved in the early stage stuff through the research collaboration. And actually, our business model is very flexible, and we did a lot of option deals. Option deals means, as I mentioned, for the early stage stuff, it is very difficult to evaluate the future, the commercial potential, because you cannot generate the target product profile, right? And if you use the research as an NPV, it is always negative, so we cannot do that. What we try to do is, we put a small deal first. We paid upfront payment at least to cover all the cost till now you have spent on your either the technology or the program. And then Daiichi will sponsor the research stage opportunity for another like 2 years, right? Hope at the end of 2 years, we can find some like preclinical candidate. Let's renegotiate the future licensing agreement after that. I think the argument from the big pharma's point of view is, you are sponsor a study that at the end will cost you more to do that kind of deal, but but for us, so far we did not have any problem with our potential partner to finalize the licensing agreement, because during the past 2 years, we already generated a trust relationship, and we are like the preferred partner.
So you're looking for Japanese rights, and in return, there's an initial upfront payment of, is it 1 to 3, 3 to 5? Is there?
I think it's really depending on therapeutic areas, right? And if we only want to get the Japanese right, typically that will be the late stage opportunities. But for some of the early stage opportunities, we can also, give the potential partner the U.S. right or even the European right. We only get the Japan. But in that case, the out-of-pocket money will be much less because the biotech company also need to contribute the portion for the preclinical discovery and to get the return for the U.S. and European right.
So for Otsuka in the early stage side, we are very clear that we are interested in global opportunities. I think to let go of US rights and touch to Japan, we would need extremely high confidence that you actually bring the compound to market in the US. You do really good clinical studies. I don't see that happen. In terms of what do we pay, I don't think there's any policy. We do research collaborations free of cost. Then if we want to do a deal, it comes at the end of the negotiation. If you have champions that really want to do that and have a budget, good things can happen. We just acquired Vistera here in Boston. They do have a clinical program, but it was mostly for the preclinical pipeline, which is very interesting, as well as the platform. Deal closed last week for $460 million.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. If we're talking mainly about equity investments, so for the more pure equity investments, I'd say we are sort of in that $500,000 to $3 million range. It depends on the technology and and if it's a seed or if it's a Series A.
Sure.
We also do investments as parts of larger collaborations where we're working deeply together, and there it varies a lot.
Just good to have an understanding of, for an early stage company, when they're talking to industry, what that we're realistic and not going in thinking we're going to get.
I mean, we always need to consider consolidation, so typically we'll stay under, for direct equity investments, we want to stay under 20%, although we have made exceptions, but that was a lot of accounting to see. We want to avoid that. It is a case-by-case basis, and the amount that you should ask for should be based on what you actually need. And then if you're doing in-licensing, then obviously there's the technology access fee, things like that, that can give you, can bump up what you'll end up receiving as opposed to the bio bucks, which you don't get to get the $500 million or $1 billion unless all your cards line up. So for me I want to make sure that when I'm dealing with a company that they know what it's going to cost to get to what their goal is for that series, whether it's seed stage or Series A. I don't need to see the exact numbers, but when people really inflate the cost, then I lose trust. So then but I don't have a problem with paying for the extras, but what the actual research costs are going to be are not really that negotiable.
Thank you.
My next question to the whole panel is, what cutting-edge technology is Pharma seeking at present? What is hot? Starting from Kathy.
Right now, we're very excited about the gene therapy space. I think you've heard about the acquisition of Advexis recently. It's an area that we are very actively looking at. Digital health and is also an area that we're excited about. And then other technologies that can help us discover drugs faster, better. Also, so I think because we're in we support the research organization, we are not only looking at at actual product-based companies, but also technology companies as well.
So Lily, we recently got into cell therapy, so that sort of opened the door for considering cell therapy for the other therapeutics. I would love for us to do gene therapy because that's one of my passions, but it's really been a struggle trying to figure out how do you approach gene therapy for large diseases, right? Because we're not focusing on rare monogenic diseases. Other things that we're looking at, protein degradation. new modalities where I've even looked at things like DNA quadruplexes, things where you're like, I have no idea if that's ever going to work into a therapeutic, but we're here to help de-risk those concepts. RNA therapeutics, we've looked at microbiome, epigenetics, whatever is a way that is beyond the small molecule and antibody domain. Of course, if you guys have a great small molecule or antibody that is not a hindrance, it's just my group in particular is tasked with finding things that my search and evaluation colleagues aren't going to see as an obvious win. So a lot of times I'll look at someone's technology and say, wow, we could really use that for diabetes. Let me see if we can do a pilot project. They're like, well, why would I go into diabetes? Like, you wouldn't, right? Because it's too hard for you to go into. But I look at your technology and I see how we could change the way that we're treating diabetes. So that's one of the interesting ways where I can help you find something that you wouldn't have done otherwise. But we do it as a separate thing, so you still get to keep your primary program. So that has been very fruitful for our team.
I think it's pretty much the same for us. We are, we don't have cell and gene therapy capabilities in-house a little bit, but not really. So we're looking for that and applications that really, in renal disease and neuro, probably more the degenerative diseases where these new technologies can do things that small molecules cannot, right? Because small molecules are easy to take. So what can we really do, breakthrough in those areas? We're very interested in bringing something in those areas. And the third, digital health, we are very active in that. We just got, I believe on my site, the first digital pill approved that actually shows you took the drug. And that comes with a whole data backend that's, as this launches, things are going to be very exciting on the data side. We do have a data science group in-house. We have expertise in the area. So every other slide I get these days says artificial intelligence. That's not exciting. There really has to be, some real substance behind the data analytics part. But we are very active in that area.
Dicentral is interested in cell therapy and gene therapy. And regarding the cell therapy, we did deal with Kite licensing the Japanese right of CAR-T. We also did a deal with a UK-based vet company called CDNC and licensing the heart cell, which is the MS, mesenchymal stem cell for the heart failure. And those are like the two phase 2 stage clinical deal we made. What will be attractive to me is really, as you know, the current CAR-T is autologous. If any company can develop allogeneic CAR-T, that is definitely what we want to get involved. Regarding the MSC, the mesenchymal stem cell part, there are a lot of companies working on it, and also there are a lot of clinical stage opportunities. But my personal impression is the safety profile has already been established, but there is no efficacy home run yet. Because you are using one cell, try different indications. It works, but not dramatically. If you can engineer MSC to let it have more potency, I would definitely want to hear the story. So that's the cell therapy part. Regarding gene therapy, and as I mentioned, Dicentral is interested in rare disease, especially the monogenic rare disease. And to target monogenic rare disease, gene therapy is the reasonable way, right? You have a gene mutation, you use the vector to deliver that gene, that's a good way. So we are interested in AAV therapy, and that is like the Spark recently got the drug approved, and those are like a hot area now. And so we have a undisclosed collaboration with a Boston-based company in using their AAV vector to deliver the gene that we are interested in. And so the challenge for the AAV therapy is that typically the AAV vector can only be dosed once, because of immunogenicity issue. That causes a lot of problem. First you have to charge a very high price, to be able to make the profit, because most of the disease also targeting rare disease and the patient population is very small. And second thing is it's also cause a lot of like safety concerns. Once it's in the right direction, wrong direction, how you can reverse the drug. So from that point of view, we are interested in like AAV technology, which can solve the immunogenicity issue, or other non-vector, non-virus vector, and technology to deliver the gene. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, my last question to the whole panel. So, what takeaway advice do you have for startup companies looking to partner with your firm?
I guess for us, it's focus on the science. And that's what's really going to drive our interest in the, in the opportunity and in the partnership. And so anything that you can do to show why, to give details about your science and show us why we should be excited is what's going to win the day with us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of times with the new companies, there's a mix-up between a pitch that you would give to an angel investor who's a non-scientific expert to my team, and so a super slick, it's all clouds and roses doesn't really work. I need to see the data. I need there to be enough data to show, so I want to always look at things non-confidentially first, and that has to do with how I interact with my therapeutic colleagues, that if I'm in non-confidential, I don't have to worry about which subject matter expert I go to. Once I'm under CDA, then we have a lot of firewall restrictions, and so if I see data that, if I have a deck that says confidential, I have to send it back to you, which is very frustrating, because if you've got me to open it, that's when you want me to read it again. Otherwise, it goes back into the queue. Being at places like this where you can network, utilizing your local incubators, getting advice from various places like MassBio to help you really get your pitch and your concepts very crisp. And it's going to keep evolving. So you'll probably notice that within a few months you may have 20 different decks, and you're going to pitch them differently for each company. Just like getting a job, you don't give the same resume to the same people, because you might be doing graft versus host, but I'm more interested in lupus. So put the lupus first, make it easy. But if you have to show the graft versus host disease information to say this is scientifically the strengths, and now I'm happy to see that. But remember, you have to do your homework to know who you're pitching it to and what they're interested in, but always feel free to ask them. Our strategy does change probably quarterly, and I have people come back to me later, and I love it when they do. They reach out and say, hey, we have new data. I'm like, great, now I didn't have to work extra hard, because now you're saying these are the few things that have changed since we last saw. And I don't always get to do deals right away. Sometimes it takes a year or two. So keep up that hard work.
Katie, before moving to Army, could you also share more experience working with incubators, as you mentioned?
Oh, sure. So Lilly is a sponsor of both Lab Central as well as the Bioinnovation Lab, so we're a network sponsor. So we have events there, we do office hours. I say we because it's just me right now in Boston, but as my team grows, we'll have more people more frequently. We'll bring people in from Indianapolis to speak. We're at networking events, so we sponsor different networking events. So we try to be out there to make it easy for you to find us. I personally prefer to do it that way than necessarily at partnering conference after partnering conference, because it's easier for you to stand out that way, and then you might get more time too. So I typically will, at a partnering conference, you might get about 25 minutes. If you can get onto my calendar, I'll try to give you an hour the best I can, but you can at least give me like a 3-minute pitch at whatever MassBio event. I'm happy to give you guys advice.
I would rate that the key is in the science. The decks I've reviewed for this conference, I focus on the 1-2 slides that actually have data in them. I think for Otsuka being a Japanese company, having to bring in Japan with the language barrier there, even if they get on the phone, I think it's really a little more paper-based. Investors look at the team, is that a good management team? That's not the first question we ask. We look at the science, we're interested in the assets and not in buying the company as a primary goal. So that's really key. As much as you can give on a non-confidential basis, put some meat there. If that means you'd rather wait another half a year to get more data that you can disclose, just wait that time. And again, it's really for understanding and getting excited. It's not to steal any IP there or something. So try to find the right spot to give us data to get excited about the science and how that connects to the medical need. That's the key.
And maybe one more thing that I would add. So another great way to get in touch with us is through our research scientists at scientific meetings. So if you meet them at a poster and you can get them excited about the science, they can come back to the business development team and share that with us and get us excited.
So I want to echo what my fellow panelists said. For us, it's also the science is most important. When you prepare your non-confidential package, you probably do not need to spend too much time on how big the market is. For most of the indication, we know, and except for if it's a really rare disease, you probably need to educate us. Otherwise, you don't need to spend time on that. Focus on the science. As if it is really a compound, you do not need to disclose the chemical structure. Then we cannot take advantage from you, right? You could just disclose the key clinical data, the efficacy data you have, on that small molecule. And if it is target, you do not even to disclose the name of the gene or the protein. You just say target A, but I have this preclinical data to validate this target, whether you are interested in it or not. So I think that is the most important, to let me look at the non-confidential package and decide whether we want to move into CDA or not.
I would sort of add, though, if you can say what pathway it's in, it's much better. I don't need to know the exact target non-confidentially, but target A and an unknown pathway will get you nowhere with me. Because that's back to the too much fluff and not enough content. So it is a real struggle with new companies to figure out how much to reveal and how much not to reveal.
Yeah.
But if execution is really the key for us, so even if it's a concept, you think my concept is so novel that if I share it, anyone can replicate it, then that's probably not that novel then. So there has to, I definitely need the meeting.
A comment on Katie's point earlier about having 20 different slide decks. Oftentimes, even as a small company, you're working on a couple of different things and you don't quite know what's of interest. And do you see any danger in sending both of those things out, or would investors look at you as if you're confused?
Oh, so you have the overview deck and then the science deck. That works, but then there is the issue that you having someone look at two things, which means that we might lose one. But that has also been really good because, so I get the overview deck and maybe that's what we go through in like the 20-minute partnering conference, and they say, well, I'm going to send you the deep dive, and then that's the one that I'll probably work with. If it's an immunology asset, I'm like, okay, I'm going to look through it. I'm a non-immunologist. This is good. Let me find out how good it is, and that's the one I'm going to share with my immunology one. So it does have a benefit to pull that out. I would say what doesn't work well is if we're in a 20-minute partnering conference and you're pulling up 4 decks and spending all that time flipping before. So having it made is great, but having it consolidated is great. So, whatever you need to do, I guess works.
So I would prefer that you have like a corporate presentation, overview your whole pipeline and introduce the company. But for the if you have multiple programs, I would prefer that you have independent non-confidential package for each program. The reason for that is once we move into next stage, typically like the BD guys, we all have like the R&D background, we have MD or PhD. We can make the first screening. But next stage, when we really go to our scientists, we send to different centers, depending on the therapeutic area. So if your two programs are two different indications, we need two different teams to evaluate. So the separate slide deck will be very helpful for us. And the last question from the audience. I think we are running out of time. Let's give us a round of applause for our wonderful panelists.